Right then, welcome back, and we're staying on the ball. FIFA's futsal consultant Graeme Dell conducted a 5-day theoretical and practical course at the JFF Academy located at the UWI Mona campus. Among the 24 local coaches who took part were Theodore Tapper-Whitmore, former national coach and player, as well as national beach football coach Andrew Price. We spoke with Dell, who serves on a team of 22 coaching instructors for FIFA who travel to developing nations to deliver coaching education courses. Take a look.
Well, I have to say, Jermaine, the response has been absolutely phenomenal. I think the application of all of the candidates on the course was first class. We had representatives from all of the 14 parishes around Jamaica and indeed some additional invited guests as well. And it was a fantastic course to operate, and the feedback that we had from the participants and indeed the activities that they got involved in was really a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. All right, let's look closer now at the game itself. How is the game played, and how is it different from traditional football or soccer?
Well, the game itself is the only unified version of small-sided football endorsed by FIFA and its 6 confederations around the world, with the exception, of course, of beach soccer. But there are many different disciplines of small-sided football that we may well conventionally know as 5, 6 or 7-a-side. But futsal is the only version that is unified, as I say, and approved by FIFA. So it's a 5v5 game, predominantly played indoors, but as we experience in countries like Jamaica, where the climate dictates possibly that the game could be played outside, then it would be played outside on pitches, courts of a similar sort of size to a basketball court, as an example. But it's not played to walls as we might expect from conventional 5v5 or 5-a-side football. And as a consequence, then it relies heavily upon the players' technical ability, their understanding of the game, and a far more intricate nature that develops a set of skill sets that are easily transferable to football. I think the most important point to make is that futsal is a game in its own right, but it's also a very, very useful tool as a player development tool for the bigger game of football.
What about the surface that it's played on? What type of surface and the size of the ball used as well?
Well, the surface itself needs to be a sound surface, so you wouldn't specifically want to be playing the game on a surface full of gravel, as an example. Right. But generally we would be looking for an indoor surface, a gymnasium type surface, as an example. Ball itself is predominantly known as a size 4 ball. It's a minimal bounce ball. People say it's a no bounce ball, but of course it has some bounce by its very nature. And those are 2 of 4 or 5 facets that make the game what it is. The other facet, of course, is the footwear. So we play with a flat-soled shoe, similar to a normal gym shoe that you may well find. But when you bring all of those elements together, and the size of the court, which is predominantly 40 by 20 metres for an international size, but you would play on smaller sizes for different age groups of players, it gives you a very fast, exciting end-to-end game that transitions between defence and attack, often at the blink of an eye, and develops very much an all-rounded and a multifaceted player.
Now, there are those who say futsal, and those like yourself who are used to this version of the sport, that say futsal increases or improves the quality of traditional football. Is this actually so?
Yeah, I think there's enough evidence base out there now when we look at the players that we would eulogise about around the world playing week in, week out in 11-a-side. Xavi, Messi, Kaká, Fabregas, Iniesta, many of the players of old who have grown up with football very much as part of their tradition, and indeed Marta as well from the women's game. Let's not forget it's a game for girls as well as boys. And I think the evidence base points to the fact that their formative years were spent applying their trade and learning their skills and honing them on a futsal court, which has given them the ability to deal with tight spaces, to play the small 5-10 metre passes, the tick-attacker that we have come to know about from Spanish type of football as an example. But it's not just about that type of football, it's about the ability to know when to play to feet or when to play to space, the ability to know when to hold the ball or when to release it, the importance of the players who don't have the ball and not just the importance of the player who has the ball. So these skills certainly are transferable, and if we think about those players that I've just mentioned, all of them have phenomenal skill sets, game understanding and the ability to read the game perhaps better than other players around the world who perhaps have come from an environment that isn't a skill-based environment, such as those who don't play futsal in the formative years. All
right, let's go back now to the 5-day course that you conducted, and just tell me a little bit about the intricacies and the specific aspects that you focused on and that you think will help to set off this version of the sport in Jamaica.
Well, the course that we ran here in Jamaica is a member association course, as we call it. They're available to all 209 member associations within FIFA. They're available to apply for
It's an introductory course, is it?
It's a course that is variable between different levels. So we would apply the same course in somewhere like Costa Rica as we would in Spain, as we would in Jamaica, as we would in England. But the skill set is with the instructor to vary the level of instruction relative to the candidate's nature and experience, indeed, that we come up against. But the principle of the course is to give a brief overview of the game, or an in-depth overview of the game as is required, to deal with the different teaching skill sets required for futsal, predominantly at the younger age group. This is a development course, so we're very much focused towards the next generation, the foundation stage of 5 to 11-year-olds. So also looking at the differences between coaching young players as opposed to coaching mature players. And then drilling down into the 3 principal disciplines of futsal: defence, attack and counter-attack, and the technical strands that exist within those, such as passing, control, playing and move, shooting as an example, and making sure that the coaches themselves understand the unique specifics about those elements as they apply to futsal at difference to football. And that's important, is to make sure that they understand the difference, so that when they go out and teach, they can do so with detail.
Now, in your course, you focused on the coaches. They were part of the course with you. What would you say you've given them now to impart to the various age groups, and in particular the youngsters?
Well, the important thing is not to recognise that we will come here and make them a different coach overnight, or in 5 days, or indeed turn them from being somebody who is a novice coach to an experienced coach. It's really to equip them with the information to enable them to go out and try for themselves and look at development for the game, recognising that the game and the way in which it would be developed in Jamaica would look very different than the way in which it might look in the United States or China or Japan or Australasia, any parts of Australasia, but give them the ability to shape the development specifically for Jamaica. And I think that's absolutely key. I think the evidence base that we have from around the world is that we can't take a model from one country and try and replicate it in another. It really has to follow the culture of Jamaica, and those coaches that were on the course last week are absolutely key to that.
That gives me the perfect segue into my final question. Based on your rapport with the coaches and what you've seen, do you see futsal taking off in Jamaica, based on what you've seen thus far?
I think from the evidence base, from what I've seen, the enthusiasm of the coaches, very much so. They recognise that the game itself is a game in its own right, as well as a development tool. I think that they see that the form of futsal, as it's been termed, that's been played in the competitions in Jamaica to date, is really a form of small-sided football on a futsal pitch, and therefore there is much more to the game which they need to go out and develop with both the clubs and indeed the communities. And I have no doubt, from the passion that they've exuded on this course, and they've been a pleasure to work with, that the future looks very bright for the next stage of the JFF's development plan.
Graeme Dell, thank you so very much for joining us here on Iron Sports, and certainly we look forward to even seeing you back here and speaking of even greater things about the development of futsal in Jamaica.
Thanks, Jermaine. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Well, let's see how much futsal takes off in Jamaica in the near future. Before we go, here are some of the events you can look forward to in the coming week. Football is afloat across the Cup quarterfinal action. There are teams to be announced. Matches on October 28 and November 4. Also, Isaflow Manning Cup second round, St. George's College versus San Diego, and Vauxhall against the defending champions Jamaica College. Also in cricket, the second test between the West Indies and Sri Lanka to be played in Colombo, and that begins on October 22. And also the fourth one-day international between the West Indies women and their Pakistani counterparts in Grozile, St. Lucia. That match on October 24. Well, there we go, and that's all we have for this edition of Iron Sports. Join us again when we'll do it all over. I am Jermaine Brown saying thanks for watching.